For so long, the CrossFit Games was the pinnacle. If you competed in our sport, that's the one thing that you were trying to accomplish. Usually, competition breeds growth, right? And I don't know if that's the intention for the World Fitness Project to be a competitor of the CrossFit Games. There's no way that top CrossFit athletes are going to be able to hang with like the top, probably 10 Hyrox guys.
Noah Ohlsen, welcome to the Men's Health Podcast.
It's an honor to be here.
Excuse me while I quickly embarrass you with your bio, but Noah is one of the most consistent and well-respected athletes in the functional fitness world, a veteran of the CrossFit Games. Noah has been competing at the highest level for over a decade, racking up multiple top 10 finishes and coming just shy of the top spot on more than one occasion. He's known for his relentless work ethic, positive energy, and unwavering determination. He's built a reputation as one of the sport's most well-rounded and approachable athletes. Sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, you were right. You made me blush a little bit. I don't know if you can tell. My face is always a bit red, and I just finished up a nice little run here. But I appreciate the kind words there. I think you hit all the main points.
I really went for it there. I really went for it.
You did,
I wonder
lathering it on.
What if we could kick off with a little bit more of your bio? How did you find your way into the world of functional fitness? What's the story there?
Well, believe it or not, Men's Health played a role in that, and I'm not just saying that to make it sound good or feel good to be sitting here chatting with you now, but I used to read on occasion as a kid my dad's Men's Health magazines. He would have the actual like paper subscription delivered to our house every month, and by the time I got into high school, college, started to become interested in weightlifting and training a little bit beyond just playing the sports that I did growing up. And one of the first, I would say, like functional fitness workouts that I ever did was around the time that the movie 300 came out. And it was actually just after that, there was a show called Spartacus. And there was an article that in Men's Health was like the Spartacus workout. And I think it was like either 10 to 20 different exercises, and you would do like 30 seconds or 40 seconds max reps. It was basically an EMOM, which I didn't realize back then. And it was the first workout that I had done where it was like really high intensity and I was pushing the pace. And I was a freshman in college at Clemson in South Carolina, doing it at like the college gym. And a year after that, I stumbled upon a CrossFit gym and realized that very similarly, the workouts kicked my butt. And there was something about that I really liked. And so since 2010, I've been training that methodology, learning how to do weightlifting properly, running, rowing, doing gymnastics, all that stuff. And like you said, I've been fortunate enough to not only compete at the CrossFit Games for over a decade, but compete in different competitions all over the world, which is pretty cool.
As you say, you've been competing at a high level for over a decade now. What's changed the most in the sport since you first started?
I would say a lot of things have changed, but the first one that comes to mind is the level of talent in the sport. When I first started, the weights that the athletes were able to lift, the skills that we were able to do, the paces that we were able to hold would be warm up weights and paces and stuff. Now, like, obviously, you could do this in any scenario, but if I were to be able to take the athlete that I am now, and I'm not even, I don't think, in my prime anymore, but like send me back in time to the CrossFit Games in 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's not a guarantee, but it would be hard to beat just because the athletes have gotten so much better. The standard for the snatch that you need to be able to hit at the games is close to 300, whereas back then when I first started, that would have been the heaviest weight by far. And now it's the weight that, like, just in order to qualify for the games, you have to be able to do. So level of athlete has changed a lot. The public perception of the sport, I feel like, has kind of gone up and down over the years. There was a little bit of a hot streak, I think, in 2014, 15, 16, where it was gaining some popularity and kind of becoming a bit more of a household name. And then things happened within the organization and it I feel like it went on a little bit of a downturn in terms of popularity, just like pop culture. Um, some stuff happened last year that maybe has not been great. So it's been a rocky road in terms of the PR for the sport and being associated with that. But those are probably two of the most major changes that come to mind at first, at least.
Let's drill down on that a little bit. It feels like CrossFit has been a bit of flux for a few years now, lots of ups and downs. And as of recording this, actually, CrossFit is back up for sale again, right? How do you
Mhm.
feel personally? And I'd love to get into the difference between, or for you, the difference between CrossFit as a sport and CrossFit as an exercise methodology and philosophy. Like, do you draw a line there?
Not often. I would say when it's necessary to draw the line, then it makes sense to be able to delineate between the two because not everybody that is utilizing the methodology is interested or aware of or participating in any capacity with the sport. Obviously, there can be crossover there if you want there to be, but there can be totally separate things as well. Like the methodology can exist without the sport. The sport cannot exist without the methodology. I guess I don't know if I've ever made that connection in my mind. But what was the original question there? I'm sorry. Before we got to the distinguishing the difference between the two.
No, I mean, let's carry on that theme. Just like I guess your thoughts, although you have covered it a little bit already, your thoughts on the kind of the flux that CrossFit has been in the last few years.
I love CrossFit. I absolutely am incredibly grateful for everything that CrossFit, period, whether you want to call it the sport or the methodology or both, has done for my life. Um, I am living in the home that I'm living in today because I've been able to make a career off of competing in CrossFit. So I'm super grateful for that. That's not to say that it's been perfect. I think that as an athlete, it's frustrating is maybe too dramatic of a word. I usually try to play a little more neutral than that, but it's difficult when year after year there are changes to the structure of the season, to the way that you qualify, to the standards of the movements, to the location and timeline. And there are so many things that, like you said, are in flux year after year. And there's not a lot of consistency, which for us as athletes makes it difficult to be able to perform to the best of our ability, to plan our season schedule and format and make sure that we're peaking at the right times is difficult. But then I think also for the general public to be able to follow along and understand what's going on, it's difficult when somebody that's new to it is like, okay, I watched last year and this is what happened. I'm back this year. It's got to be just like that again, right? And you're like, well, actually, we got rid of the quarterfinals and semifinals thing. And instead, this year you qualify this way. But in the past, it was this way. And they're like, sometimes I can't even keep it all straight, which it just isn't good for anybody. But I understand that it's a big organization and there's always lots of changes that need to be made. I am just hopeful, as with, I would imagine, a majority of our community, that with the recently announced sale, it is sold to someone or a group of someones that will be the right hands for the brand and help it get back to a place that we all feel really good about again.
Who would be your dream buyer?
That is a good question. I don't know if I have one. I maybe should have thought that through when I saw that it was announced. Like funny people come to mind first more than realistic ones. Like, I don't know, celebrity thing. I saw somebody like posted a thing about Dana White or other people that maybe have a ton of experience running and owning other sports, but don't understand ours as in depth as they would maybe need to, or need to learn to. My mom actually texted me the other day and saw that CrossFit was for sale and sent me the link to the article and said, "You and Guido." And it just made me chuckle. Guido is a good friend of mine who owns the gym that I train at every day. He's the guy that founded Wadapalooza. And um, I I actually don't know if that would be my dream. That would be a lot of responsibility, and I'm sure
Yeah.
there are some things that I'd be able to do well, but I don't know that I am prepared enough to do that the right way. I'm sure there are other, business people and people with good morals out there, hopefully, that can meet in the middle and do a good job.
Yeah. Let's look to the future a little bit and the present. Talk to me about the World Fitness Project.
I'm excited about that, man. That's something that's fresh and new, kind of an alternative to, addition to the CrossFit Games and the season that a lot of the athletes in our sport have been used to, which is cool. For so long, the CrossFit Games was the pinnacle. It's if you competed in our sport, that's the one thing that you were trying to accomplish was first just qualifying for the CrossFit Games, and then once you got there, trying to win the CrossFit Games. And if you did that, you were on top of our world. And it was always just that. There were little supplementary competitions like Wadapalooza, Dubai, ECC over the years that gained some popularity, but CrossFit Games was always the thing. So with an additional entity, it will be cool to see hopefully how much that elevates the sport for the athletes, for the viewers, for competition organizers. Usually competition breeds growth, right? And I don't know if that's the intention for the World Fitness Project to be a competitor of the CrossFit Games, but World Fitness Project, I'm sure, has looked at the CrossFit Games and learned as much as they can and is going to try to level up from there. And maybe that'll cause CrossFit to continue to do that and they can both just kind of grow. Personally, it's exciting for me just to be a part of something new. And from the beginning, I theoretically had like loosely retired from competing as an individual at the CrossFit Games. That doesn't mean as an individual in general, as a human. So now that I have the opportunity to compete as an individual in the World Fitness Project, that was something that I pondered a little bit, but didn't think too much about and was excited to commit to, even though I had maybe left that world of individual competition behind, just again, because it is exciting to be a part of something from the very beginning and maybe lay the foundation for something that could allow other young athletes to live a life similar to the one that I've been fortunate enough to for the last decade and time. Sorry, very long winded.
Yeah. No, that was actually great. I don't know. I'm just going to flag this up now because it's liable to come up. I don't know the order in which these are going to go out, but I've just spoken to our mutual friend Chandler Smith, like
Yeah,
literally
the
just got
man.
off, and we were having a similar conversation. We're talking about the WFP, about the World Fitness Project. I wonder if you've got any more spoilers than he has. Can you tell us a little bit more about what people can expect from a WFP event?
I would imagine that Chandler has heard more whispers than I have. He's usually pretty good at gathering that kind of information, but the things that we know so far, and hopefully this isn't redundant with your conversation with him, is for the first year, there are 3 tour dates: Indianapolis, Arizona, and Denmark. And they are going to be kind of the style like some other sports where you accumulate points at each of those. And then at the end of the season, whoever has the most points wins the overall. And you can also win each of those individual competitions. Um, Spoilers, I know that they are already working on adding at least 1 to maybe 2 more events to the season for next year for 2026. So rather than there being 3, there would be, I think, ideally 5 events for them. Um, what else? Don't know anything about the workouts. Don't really know anything about the structure of them. I know Will Morad is a good friend of mine and is pretty heavily involved in determining a lot of that. And I think through his experience of competing at the CrossFit Games since 2014, like myself, understands how to program an event safely, intelligently, excitingly. I don't know if that's a word, but I think that he's gonna have a pretty good grasp on hopefully creating a competition that's not gonna beat us up too much, that's gonna be exciting for the fans to watch, and, allows it to be sustainable beyond just this first year.
You spoke about already adding a number of events. Is that the kind of general aim, to sort of spread those out and create a greater sort of opportunity to express your fitness throughout the year, as opposed to having a sort of very limited window of opportunity to prove that you're the best in the world?
I don't know, yeah, I kinda like the idea of both for different reasons. Back in the day, I probably would have said that more is better and the more opportunities that you had, especially if it was cumulative throughout the season. The CrossFit Game season is always kind of clean slate at each stage. So you qualify from the open to regionals back in the day. And when you get to regionals, you're starting 0 points. Qualify from regionals to the games, you get to the games, you're starting with 0 points all over again, where the 2016 was the only year that I won the Worldwide Open, had those points carried over into the CrossFit Games season. I maybe, or I'm sorry, into the CrossFit Games themselves, the finals. I maybe wouldn't have had my worst finish at the CrossFit Games ever that year. So big contrast between peaking at one time versus performing at the end. Having that accumulation of points throughout the season allows athletes to benefit from doing well at one and maybe not so well at another, and puts a little bit less weight on just one weekend. I think we've always said that, like, if you show up to the CrossFit Games and you are the fittest person in the world all year, but the week before the games you got sick, got injured, then your whole season is kind of reflecting just on those few days that you're there. So I like the idea of that being a little bit more spread out, but being a little bit older now and less like down for the grind as I used to be, I definitely like the idea of doing a little bit less and still reaping the same reward.
Yeah, I guess even 3 or 5 is still not a huge amount, right? You know, it's not something like a Grand Prix format where it's every other weekend. I mean, I could see how, I mean, you'd certainly find the fittest in the sense of, the person most able to avoid injury
Durable.
over a 6-month period, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think if they decided they wanted to increase the frequency, they would just have to decrease the volume per event. So if you're leaving a 3-day competition feeling super beat up and exhausted and having to do it again the next week, it's just not going to be fun for the athletes. It's not going to be fun for the fans to watch somebody dragging through and not being able to perform at a high level. So I think if they wanted to have 10 events eventually throughout the year, it would only be maybe 1 day at a time. Or if it was a 3-day competition, there would only be 2 events per day, just so that over the course of the season, there's more balance and the athletes can sustain that volume.
Mm. Yeah, and like you say, just anything that presents a sort of healthy bit of competition to the sort of centralization of CrossFit at the moment. Ultimately, if you're going to be in a race, a 2-horse race is quite a good one to be in, and
Yeah,
that should push everything on. The
I hope
the
so.
kind of alternative options we've seen to sort of the main CrossFit season in terms of competition in the past. I'm thinking about things like Grid League, etc. Where
Mm.
do you think they have fouled? Is the wrong word. I don't want to say fouled, but why do you think nothing has quite managed to get up there with the Open and with regionals
Mhm.
and the games?
That's a good question. The off the top of my head, I think because CrossFit is so, what's the word, like, strong, potent, the brand of CrossFit, the people that are behind it, the athletes and like community are so loyal to CrossFit. There's clearly been a little bit of a shift lately where I think at a certain point, um people draw the line and are gonna not gonna be loyal to a fault. But prior to maybe last year, people were so loyal to CrossFit that anything else that came up, they saw as, whoa, like this, like we said, competition to CrossFit. I love CrossFit so much. I don't even want this thing to maybe overshadow CrossFit because it's my thing. And so I know for a fact that during the initiation of the grid league, there was a line drawn in the sand by brands, by people that were higher up within the companies that said, hey, you have to choose one or the other. And if you choose to do this one, you can't do this. And so that obviously makes it difficult for both to thrive at the same time. And that's not necessarily the reason that the grid league didn't survive, just because people chose CrossFit over that. But um, it's tricky. I think CrossFit got really lucky that it labeled the type of high intensity interval activity training at the time that it did, and kind of branded it in the way that it did, because obviously that's a popular style of training and people love it. So they were just maybe not the first ones, but they were the ones to like really solidify their stance on owning that methodology. And have created a lot of loyalty since then.
Speaking of competitors in the competitive exercise world, Hyrox, what do you think?
Man, I had a bit of a wake up call recently watching my first actual Hyrox. I watched the Hyrox Las Vegas on YouTube. And I think myself, along with a lot of other people, thought, oh, this is kind of a cool new sport that CrossFitters could be pretty good at if they just ran a little bit more. When I watched those dudes run, even the ladies, I was like, "Oh, wow, we're so far off. There's no way that the top CrossFit athletes are gonna be able to hang with, like, the top probably 10 high rocks guys are just such high level endurance speed athletes." I was talking to my dad about it the other day, because I don't think he had that realization either, that it seems like at first I think there was this idea that you could be a CrossFitter that improves your speed and be really good at high rocks, but it seems much more likely to me that if you're a good runner that gets just strong enough to handle
Yeah.
all the other stuff, you're going to be a lot more successful than the other way around. And so I'm going to play ball. Like, I'm going to do my first high rocks with Chandler here in Miami in about a month, April 20th. And I think we'll do well. Like, we'll do the best that we can, but it just doesn't seem right now like we are going to be as competitive at the elite level as we are in the sport that we've been doing for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, which is so crazy because historically you've always had this there's always been this notion, which I think does bear out most of the time, that it's much easier to transition into endurance than it is the other way around. Like it's easier for someone who's relatively strong already to train to run a marathon
Mhm.
than it is for someone who's a fantastic marathon runner to get a triple bodyweight deadlift. But at the thin end of the wedge in high rocks, that's just not panning out like that, right? Because
Yeah.
these guys
Well,
are phenoms.
so I think that's still true, though, that the transition from one into the other would be easier, because from CrossFit or strength based sports into high rocks, there's a lower barrier to entry, right? There's not a ton of skills that you need to learn. So your everyday athlete is going to have an easier time transitioning into doing high rocks. I'm not saying competitively, but just being able to do them. Then an endurance athlete is going to be able to transition into a strength sport or CrossFit, because there's this prerequisite level of strength that you need to develop. There's these skills that you'd need to learn. So just like crossing over from one into the other, I think it'd be a lot easier to go
Hmm.
from my direction into theirs versus the opposite. But when you're talking high level elite, either one would be super hard, right? Like, you're also not going to see the top high rocks guys all of a sudden become the top
Yeah.
CrossFitters, but you're also probably not going to see the top CrossFitters be the top high rocks guys. And it makes sense. It's like any other sport,
Yeah.
right? You're like, you choose to specialize in that one thing and you're going to dominate that thing, but you're not going to be like an NBA player is not going to be able to be the best NFL player, just by nature of it being a different skill set that you're going to practice every day.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, I think that you were making there, I think if you were to cross over the top guys, even though, as you say, like it's not like, I think initially, as you mentioned, people had this idea of, oh, sort of wait till high level CrossFitters start doing it. And
Hmm.
then But I think if you crossed over top guys, I still think that the top field of CrossFit would finish higher in Hyrox, still not at the top, than the
Yeah,
top of Hyrox, just because of the skill
I think you're
component and
right.
the strength component.
Mhm.
Yeah. How's all the running training working out for you now then?
It's been okay. By chance decided to do an Ironman with a couple of my buddies. How many months ago was that now? Like 5 months ago, back in November. And so I had to build running volume for that because there's a marathon at the end of that. I'd never run a marathon before. It's obviously very different style of running volume. We're talking 26 miles at maybe like a 9 minute per mile pace. And I'm sorry, I know you and maybe many other listeners from Men's Health UK are thinking of it in kilometers, but
Yeah, we do
my
bios. You're okay. We do
yeah,
both here. So
okay, okay, good. Glad to hear. That makes it easier for me at least. But um it's so different, that type of training and endurance running versus CrossFit or Hyrox running. It's funny because I finished the Ironman and went and competed at the Rogue Invitational, which was a challenge in itself. But the first event at Rogue was a longer ish running event with moving sandbags and different heavy objects. And as I was running, I was kind of towards the back of the pack, maybe in the last in my heat during that first event at Rogue. For whatever reason, maybe it was some residual fatigue from the Ironman or the travel or whatever the excuse may be, but I was slacking. And one of the judges that was on the course, making sure that everybody was going the right direction, is like, "Hey, man, I thought you just finished an Ironman. Shouldn't you be running faster than that?" And as frustrated as that made me in the moment, playfully, I was like, "It's just so different." Like I
yeah.
had just come from running 26 miles at a 9 minute mile pace. When you're doing a CrossFit event or a Hyrox that is 1Ks or 800 meters at a time at a 6 minute mile pace, that feels so different. It's such a different energy system, such a different like muscular stimulus. So yes, it's beneficial that I've been doing a lot of running in a way, but it's not like it's automatically going to carry over the fact that I've been doing a ton of volume of running, because now I need to focus a lot more on how quickly I'm running shorter distances.
What does your training look like at the moment in general?
So I have been the loosest, I would say, in terms of following a program recently than most other times in my career, which I actually don't mind. It's been fun and now kind of feels like a period of time that's appropriate. I'll dial it in a little bit prior to some of the WFP events because I want to perform well, just competitively. That's my nature. But I've been probably Monday through Saturday taking a peak class. That's the gym that I train at once a day. It's a 1 hour class that has your classic CrossFit stuff. It's a little bit of a strength component, a Metcon, some skill work, whatever, different things on different days. And then at least 3 days a week, I'm trying to add in some other running volume, whether that's at the track alone or doing some sort of Hyrox prep style thing. So that's kind of what my training looks like. It's like an hour of CrossFit, maybe plus another hour or two of strength training and other CrossFit stuff a couple days a week, plus an hour or two of running or Hyrox style training the other few days of the week that I'm training.
Have you had to adjust your nutrition at all?
I had to know. Should I? Probably. Um, Again, I think I'm just allowing myself this little period of not being as strict as I was for 12 years, where I had a program that I woke up every morning and had to check off the list, tracking my macros every day. I have done that for so long that when I was in this in between period before I signed with the WFP and maybe wasn't going to do the CrossFit Games, where I was like, let me just give myself a break and see what it feels like to be. Uh, I don't mean this in a derogatory way towards anybody, but just like a normal human and not have the pressure for a few months of tracking my macros and following a program. Like I said, I may dial that in soon, but as of right now, I'm just like trying to eat generally healthy My weight has been pretty balanced and maintained through all that training. I thought I was going to lose a good bit of weight adding all the training in, all the endurance stuff that I was doing, but stayed right at like 190 pounds for the last, I don't know, couple years.
Did training for the Ironman and racing in the Ironman as well, did it change your thoughts at all, or give you anything to think about in terms of how you're fueling sort of intra competition?
Oh, big time. Yeah. Not necessarily so much so that it changed the way that I'm approaching fueling for CrossFit and my training and competing there, although it should. I think I've fallen back into my habits of not fueling as much or as often as I did during the Ironman prep. That is, they're so dialed in with that stuff, those endurance athletes, more so for an Ironman, I think, than just the regular marathon, because it's such a long period of time. You're talking 10 to 14 hours of moving your body. And so during that stuff, you're training and competing, consuming carbs every 15 minutes is what my interval was when I was checking my watch during the Ironman. I was taking like 20 to 25 grams of carbohydrates per 15 minutes. And so in 10 hours, if I'm consuming 100 grams of carbs per hour, I was consuming 1,000 grams of carbs, 4,000 calories of straight carbohydrates in a day during the Ironman. And that's definitely not what a day of fueling for CrossFit training looks like. Some people do a bit more of that. I know there are a lot of CrossFit athletes that will be pretty on it with making sure they're fueling between sessions, between events at competitions, whether it's candy or something a bit healthier. And the first couple weeks that I was doing a bit of both, like Ironman prep, while also doing like a in-house competition at our gym, I found myself bringing a gel with me to
Mm.
have between events. And I was like, this is kind of cool. I could see there being some benefits to this, but I have since loosened the reins a lot and just gone back to my old ways of not eating as much.
Yeah, I've been wondering lately, with so much crossover, with so many people crossing over from, CrossFit, and they're going to take on Hyrox events. They're doing a lot more sort of base building, zone two, endurance stuff, and just the rise of endurance training in general. I've actually been thinking, I wonder how many people from the functional fitness community are going to now be like, oh, hey, like we should be taking gels to the gym, like to the gym
Yeah.
with us. This would be so great. Chandler and I were just discussing how much maybe historically, and I don't know if this is so true for people who have come into CrossFit in the last probably 10 years, but previous to that, this historical sort of hmm, how can I put it? Like not favoring carbohydrates, like that if you go back far enough, I'm talking like when paleo was a huge thing in the
For sure.
community,
I
and
was just thinking that.
yeah, and even I can remember like old videos of Rich Froning, and people would ask him about his
Peanut
nutrition, and
butter
he'd
and
be like,
whole milk.
yeah, I just had a donut today. And you're like,
Yeah.
that's not going to wash in endurance training, right? You just hit
Right.
the wall so hard. And I wonder now, with endurance gaining such popularity across these other communities, how much that will sort of bring in, which is, I think, is beneficial.
Yeah. I'm curious about that as well. I think most of the crossover that we're seeing, at least that my feed is pushing to me, is what you're saying, kind of CrossFitters, maybe other lifting athletes doing the Hyrox thing, which you could consider a Hyrox an endurance event, but it's really an
Mhm.
hour. And relative to people doing marathons or triathlons, it's not necessarily an endurance sport where you need this like consistent fueling. And during
Yeah.
a Hyrox, you're probably not going to be taking a gel. I don't know if these guys are doing gels in between the runs. That's something that I should probably look into before we do it. But I don't think it's as important for a 1 hour thing as it is for things that are multiple hours.
Yeah, that's where I've always like in my own mind between taking on stuff like an Ironman. Once I go over 90 minutes, that's when I'm like, okay, now we need to think
Mhm.
about fueling the workout. Whereas you can sub 90 minutes, you can get away with the, the donut and the peanut butter
Yeah.
to some degree. Um,
How much do you think, just out of curiosity, talking about the crossover, that we're kind of mainly talking about CrossFit and Hyrox, but the hybrid buzzword, I feel like it was probably pretty popular. It feels like now it's leveling out a little bit, but I think a hybrid athlete now is also something that you're seeing more of the general public pursuing, which
mm,
means maybe somebody that is going and running, maybe not even competitively, but they're doing a long run a couple
yeah.
days a week, but they're also going in the gym and doing some bodybuilding training, maybe some powerlifting. Do you see that as within the men's health sphere becoming more popular than kind of doing one or the other?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think you see some really sort of lazy criticism about it. And you know what? Funnily enough, I think sometimes you see that criticism come from sometimes, and I'll preface this by saying, I mean, have been the biggest fan of CrossFit for more or less, my entire adult life. Uh, you see a lot of criticism coming out of that camp, which is so ironic when like yourself, we've been in a game long enough to remember when CrossFit took so much of the same criticism
Yeah.
um, from a mainstream audience. Yeah, I think it's incredibly popular. I think when people take a pop at it, they're taking a pop at a very loosely ill-defined version of it. The same as when people used to, talk shit about CrossFit. They're not really
Hmm.
talking about CrossFit. They're talking about what they think it is.
Yeah.
I think hybrid training, um, hybrid workouts, whatever, hybrid a hybrid athlete, it
Hmm.
does have a very specific um, definition term coined by Alex Viada, and the idea is you're training for capacities that are competing in some ways, like
Hmm.
they do not support each other
Right.
at all. Um, and this operates at any level, right? This doesn't necessarily mean you have to be powerlifting and running marathons.
Right.
You could just be lifting heavy for yourself and doing a lot of running. Uh, I think all movement's good movement. I think
Yeah.
why
I agree.
most
I
things
think it's
work.
it's just being well-roundedly fit and healthy,
Yes.
going for a run
Yeah.
is good for your cardiovascular system, lifting weights is good for your muscles and joints and heart health as well. Like
Yeah.
it's people pursuing that, I think, are um maybe better off in some ways than the people that are just specializing, if they're not pursuing high goals in either one and you're just doing it for general health and fitness. You maybe are better off doing a little bit of both versus just doing a
Yeah.
ton of one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about this and spoken to a lot of people about this, and because there's obviously people that will say, "Oh, CrossFit has always been hybrid training," but then if you take the CrossFit methodology and stick it in a box, and as a business model, it is limited by de facto to you've got to do 60-minute sessions and things like that,
Hmm.
which is going to stop you. And I think, is it Pat Sherwood from CrossFit Linchpin, and he just has a very simple motto, which is like once a week go long, which I think is just a really good way to.
Yeah.
That's maybe something that you have if you are somebody who trains at a CrossFit box, that's perhaps something that you have to take some personal responsibility for, and just run for 90 minutes outside of your box once a week.
Yeah.
And I think you've ticked that box. I think what hybrid training has done is create a very visible and accessible and motivating, in the sense that it makes people want to go out and do it, way to sort of fit all that in,
Hmm.
which previously you would have had to thought about that yourself, right? And if you're not incentivized to do really long runs, most people, and I'm looking at myself and other CrossFitters here, most people aren't going to take it upon themselves to go and run half marathons at the weekend.
Right.
Whereas if you make it a real thing, if you call it hybrid training, and it's the same as CrossFit, right? You give people something to hang their hat on,
Yeah.
and that motivates them to go out and do it, which I
Totally.
think is great. And I think, like I say,
It
all
gives you like a
movements,
sense of
good
identity
movement.
and a bit of a
Yes.
community as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have other people to look up to and to do research on and follow maybe. Um, what did that just make me think? We were talking about hybrid. Yeah, so you talked about them being competitive in the sense that one is not really going to lead you to gains, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
in the other. It is a bit of a transition, I think, or an adaptation period that I experienced, and I imagine everybody would if you're coming from one and trying to add a bit of the other, to where going out and doing a long run for me made my joints pretty achy at the beginning, like my knees and hips hurt. And so going in the next day after having done a long run and wanting
Mm.
to do squats or jumping was miserable. And so I could see some people maybe wanting to dip their toes in it, doing it, feeling like if you're a CrossFitter and you're like, you know what, I want to try this hybrid thing and do some longer runs, and you go for a 10-mile run, and the next day you go to do your CrossFit workout and are just miserable because everything hurts and you don't give it a chance beyond that for your body to make those adaptations, you could be like, heck no, I'm not doing that. Running's not for me. But to be fair, in about a month, I would say, of doing both, my body came around and I was able to handle the volume of each without feeling miserable doing either.
That's really nice. So would that be your advice to anyone in the, let's just say the functional, anyone who lifts heavy weights really,
Yeah,
just to give it time? Like if you do want to dip your toe in both, don't automatically think that your lifts are going to plummet and just,
I think so. And yeah, I mean, that's obviously a worry for people is, oh, I'm going to get so much weaker if I start running a ton. I was so pleasantly surprised. I guess I was in that camp as well. I thought my back squat's going to go down a ton if I'm running an extra 20 miles a week. And the by just like getting touches on it still once a week, it I was able to maintain my strength a lot more than I thought that I would have been able to. Um, and so, yeah, I would encourage anybody if you want to try it, adding either one of them in, either of the extremes, lifting if you're a runner or running if you're a lifter, give it some time. It's probably going to be tough at first, but hopefully your body is a pretty amazing machine and will learn to adapt and get stronger and feel better as you go.
what's your advice for anybody who's potentially is a bit time poor? They don't necessarily, they've still got that. Let's say they were in the gym 5 hours a week. They were in the box 5 hours a week, and that's still the only training time they've got. But they want to look at incorporate. They want to look at becoming a hybrid athlete. What would your advice be for them?
Yeah, that's tricky because some of the endurance stuff can be pretty time consuming. When we were doing the training for the Ironman, like you have to go and do 2, 3, 4, 5 hour run, bike, swim combo. Otherwise, you're not going to be prepared for going for 12 hours on game day. And so that was tough. I think we had this, I had like a 2 month window of getting ready for the Ironman where every Friday, I would tell my wife, "Hey, tomorrow I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m. with the guys and go down to Key Biscayne, and I'll see you later in the afternoon, early evening, because we're gonna be biking for 5 hours. I'm gonna come home, have to shower, be miserable for an hour because I'm all achy and tired." And um, it's tough when you're like committed to the big thing like that. But if you're just getting started and you just want to add a little bit of mileage here and there, I think easing your way into it is probably good. I actually said to myself when we had finished running the Miami Marathon and I was starting to get back into CrossFit training, but going to do the Hyrox, I was like, let me just add a mile warm up or cool down before my CrossFit workouts. Could be an easy pace every day that I'm training. Like that's 7 to 10 minutes. That is not going to make or break my day. And if I do it 5 days this week, that's an extra 5 miles on top of the 5 miles that I maybe did on my track session that I wasn't doing before. And so, like sneaking in little bits of it here and there, I think can help your body slowly adapt because it's a little bit more spread out than just jumping in and trying to go for a half marathon run all at once.
Yeah, nice, nice. And I think that probably preps you quite well as well. Let's say you push some of that running mileage up to 10K, which is still sub an hour for most, for the majority of people.
Hmm.
You're in a pretty good space to go and do a high rocks then, right?
Yeah.
With just that one extra session. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. It makes everything very accessible all of a sudden, doesn't it?
Yeah, I try. I feel like that's if I can be a positive influence to people. I realized that a lot of the stuff that we do as CrossFit Games athletes can be pretty intimidating and scary. Even my parents, when I first started doing CrossFit 15 years ago and was trying to get them to do it themselves just for their health, they were like, we can't do what you do. They would go to my competitions and be like, I can't walk on my hands or lift that weight. And I recognize that a lot of people that maybe just follow us on Instagram are like, I can't do what they do. I can't be like them. And I would never want to create that intimidation factor or a barrier of entry to people. I just said recently, somebody was like, what's the biggest myth in the world of health and fitness that you could debunk? And I was like, I think that people, especially when they look at CrossFit, think everything has to be super hard, high intensity all the time. That's not true. Like, if you're not up for that, it's fine to just go for a 20, 30-minute walk. That's going to be better than doing nothing. And
Mhm.
if you do that for a couple weeks, maybe eventually you want to go for a jog instead. And if you're jogging, maybe you're up for I don't know, like, it can slowly build on itself. So, accessible, fun fitness is definitely something that I want to try to promote to everybody out there, being happier and healthier.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%, man. I couldn't be more like in agreement there. I think for a long time in the fitness industry, people banged this drum of like stop exercising, start training. Like if you're not,
Mm,
if you're not hitting things with super high intensity, you're just wasting your time. And that creates such a high barrier for entry. For I always think to myself, like when we say go hard or go home, it's not very enticing for people who
yeah.
just want to be at
They're
home
like, okay,
anyway,
I'll
right?
go home. Yeah.
Cool. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. If those are my only options, yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that.
I've got a round of quick fire questions for you, Noah. So just
Hit me.
come
I'm
straight
ready.
at me. What are your go-to workout tunes?
Big hip hop guy. J. Cole, Lil Wayne, Drake, Kendrick now. Yeah, that's what gets me going.
Can you guess? Can you guess what Chandler said?
His music taste is so eclectic. I couldn't even begin to guess. He sent me an album the other day to listen to from Whitney, which I thought was Whitney Houston, but it was like,
That's it.
really?
Oh no, he
I
said he said Whitney Houston actually, but please carry
okay,
on.
okay, yeah. Just I don't know. He's like into indie. He likes hip hop as well. He likes it all, and he's very well versed in that. I'm pretty plain Jane, like pop culture, whatever's in that hot 100. But yeah, he always impresses me with that stuff.
If you could train with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
I said recently on a podcast, someone asked me a very similar question, Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I think that would just be really cool. He's such a character and was obviously such a beast and a titan in his industry back in the day. Um, if it were, the another one of the first ones that comes to mind, I give him props and credit for really elevating the hybrid athlete lifestyle is Nick Bear. I think I haven't had the opportunity to train with him ever. We've had a couple conversations before, but I think he does a pretty good job of being a pretty well-rounded athlete that can do some impressive things on the endurance and strength side of, yeah.
Would you want to lift with him or would you want to go get out for a run?
I don't know if I could hang on a run. His paces are incredibly impressive. He's
Insane.
run
Yeah.
like a 2 hour, 40-minute marathon, and I just took an hour longer than that to do the one down here in Miami. So he would leave me in his dust. But that would make me better. So I think it'd be cool if it was an athlete in any other sport to do like a 50-50 day where they would come into the gym with me, do a little like Metcon style workout, some strength training, and then I would get to do whatever style of training that they do. I think it would give us both an appreciation for each other, like a mutual respect.
That's a great idea for a video series, mate. You should should
It
follow
definitely
up on
has
that.
been done. I wouldn't be the first, but I'm not opposed to doing it as well.
What's your most memorable moment from competition?
Obviously, the ones that come to mind first, or maybe not obviously for everybody, but for me, it's the exciting wins. Those are fun, and they are not necessarily like few and far between, but in our sport, being well-rounded leads you to winning, not just like dominating one thing. So, um, event wins I haven't had a ton of in my career, but I had one cool event win at the CrossFit Games and a workout called Mary in 2019. That was pretty epic. And then there's one that I remember really fondly at Wadapalooza down here in Miami, where I was in the lead going into the final workout overall of the competition and basically just had to do well on this last workout in order to win the whole thing. And I had gotten to the final element of this workout, which was 10 thrusters at I think 165 pounds. And I picked the bar up. I was the first one to the final set of thrusters, and everybody in the crowd counted out my reps for me, like all at once. It was one, two, all the way down to 10, and kind of cheered when I finished. And that was really, really cool and special. So, um, there are more cool memories that aren't surrounding winning, but those are the ones that came to mind. And I know it's rapid fire, so I'm gonna send you on to the next question.
If you could only do one exercise for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
Hmm, that is tough. I would have never said this until more recently, but running would maybe be up there. If it wasn't running, it would probably be like a big compound lift that would be pretty full body, maybe like a thruster or an overhead squat, something where you're using your legs, your core, your arms all at once. So running and thrusters, which sounds like a gross combo to me, but
Yeah.
I think that'd probably get you the fittest if that was all you were able to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's annoying how it's always the gross things that do get you the fittest,
Right?
isn't
Why does it have to be
it?
so hard?
What the hell? Why can't bench press just make me fitter and live forever?
All yeah, overall, that would be nice.
What's your favorite meal?
I think tacos probably. They're just so easy and tasty and versatile, whether it's beef, chicken, pork, and I don't know, anything. You could take any meat basically, kind of chop it up, add a bunch of fun toppings, put it in a tortilla, heat it up, and it's probably going to be pretty tasty. We were just talking about our baby shower that we'll be having in our backyard here in a few months. And I think a taco bar is going to be the food of choice for the guests for those same reasons.
Nice. You can hop in the portal, travel back in time, and talk to a 16-year-old Noah, but the portal is going to close in 30 seconds. What are you going to say to him in
Yikes.
that time?
Be nice, have fun, be yourself, be confident. Don't feel like you have to be whatever you think you need to be. You don't have to be cool. Being cool is just being yourself and being kind. Work super hard, but have a ton of fun.
Very, very nice. What's next on the horizon for you, Noah?
Like we talked about, got the WFP season coming up, have a couple Hyrox races. The Just staying on the fitness topic, there are a couple projects that I may get involved with since the Iron Boys, myself, Scott, Aaron, and Evan took on our Ironman last year. We've been toying with the idea of doing another Ironman this year or a couple half Ironmans here and there. Um, I wanted to and maybe still will take on a project that would be a way that I think would exemplify ultimate speed, strength, and endurance, kind of all in a day would be a big challenge that perhaps Men's Health would want to cover and be a part of. I'll have to chat with you offline about that so it doesn't get stolen by somebody else. But outside of the fitness realm, I just alluded to it, but my wife and I are expecting our first child here this summer, which we're incredibly excited about. A little baby boy. That's going to be awesome and life changing, and I can't wait to be a dad. So those are the big things that I've got going on in my life right now. Pretty happy guy.
Well, congratulations, mate. And thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you, my brother. It was a pleasure.